why not experiment on yourself, right? It's almost given like every almost a villain theme, like in every Marvel film. It's like, you know what? I'm a doctor. I'm gonna inject myself, like Lizard Man from Spider Man. Like he was like, I'm gonna just inject myself to have regenerative attributes of a lizard. Um, where do you see this going? Besides the plants, do you think this can actually go out of hand where people just started growing extra stuff just because?
When you look at the human side of things, you got to be careful because that's why the FDA really regulates about cloning. Cloning is where you may have problems. You remember Dolly the sheep that they cloned years ago?
Hmm.
And the problem with that is that they've discovered that when you clone, like an existing, like a chromosome DNA and stuff like that, and you clone it into a fetus or a baby and it develops into adult, well, because of that half-life that you've taken it, let's say that that particular whole genes and set are aged at 1 through 100, but then when you obtain it halfway into it, now you're not at the 100 mark, at the 50 mark. That's why that one had a lot of complications with it. With that, it's a lot of weird and interesting things that are doing not here in the United States per se, right? But in
Hmm.
other countries that are really experimenting about that kind of world. And then, you know, hey, who knows where the future is at? So that's why you don't want so much the DNA component, the live cells. You want the signal. You want your own tissue to do its own job. So you have that bicep that should be your bicep, not like a bicep that has a heart muscle in there. You got to be careful what you're
Right.
putting into your body. So that's why it's really important to understand about signals and not live cells. Not live cells have the ability to do that tumor formation.
That makes sense because there was a movie called The Island that was talking about the duplication, but it was mostly celebrities because they're the only ones that could afford it. So pretty much they were cloning themselves so that if they broke an arm, they can just go down and take the clone's arm and then reattach to themselves because it's cell to cell replacement. Um, I just hope it doesn't get that far.
No, can you imagine? I think was that part of the movie where those clones had a personality just like
Yep.
them, and all of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's here's a funny thing with people, right? We're always trying to experiment, and then some of these things are not governed. So there are people in some basement right now doing some type of petri dish, making their own tissue, probably doing something interesting, and that's where the danger comes, because when it gets out of hand and they lose control, well, now it's out. So I don't want to say this, but it could be like COVID 2.0, right? So we got to be
Mm.
careful.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, now one thing because I noticed that in your book you're talking about your knee pain and how you're recovering from that. How's your knee by the way nowadays?
But that was Jeff's knee. So
Jeff knee. Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So that book is the reason why I wrote that book is there were people asking, questions over and over about that same type of topic. What is stem cells? What does it
Hmm.
do? Why is it going this way? What so after, a couple months of this, I've got to write a book. The book will explain everything as far as like different kinds of stem cells, what they do, and why it's dangerous right now and where the future is moving towards. But because of the science side of it, it was complicating. Like, wow, there's a lot of information, a lot of medical terminology. I needed another side of it to kind of, summarize what that whole thing's all about. And that's why Jeff helped me walk along with the layman's term to explain things in that format. So you had the science side of it, and then you got Jeff talking about the summary of what the whole science side is. You can follow his journey from having knee pain, discovering stem cells, learning about the procedure now, and then where the future is moving towards.